Hello everyone. It is officially day 8 and we're at the end of day 8 for Tour de Fleece, and here is where we're at. So at the last video I was talking through kind of my bobbin management and stuff for my 2 braid fade. So you can go back a couple videos if you want to see the actual fiber and then the spin in progress. And now I have that spin all finished. So I think I showed this last time. I can't even remember if I had this. No, I don't think I had it applied up yet. Maybe I did. Maybe I should have gone and looked, but it's too late. Okay, so this is what I'm calling skein number 1 from my 2 braid fade. Now, as a reminder, my 2 braid fade is 2 braids, and I'm doing of 2 different colors. One is pure of one color, one skein will be pure of the other, and then the third one in the middle is going to be a mix of both. So 1 ply from each. So this has 2 plies from the same color. The other one will have 2 plies from the same color, and then the one in the middle will have 1 from each. So this is the first, and this is super squishy. And I have some specs written down over here because I want to go over sort of, I think for my topic today, I'm going to go over measuring, weighing, differences between fibers, stuff like that. So this is skein 1. This is the Bramble Ridge Polwarth, and it's in her colorway KCV 23, which was her exclusive colorway for Knit City Vancouver that I wasn't at, but I bought from her shop afterwards in a shop update. And I love it with sort of the golds and the purples. You can see the purples here, and I am going to open these up in a minute too. So that's the first one, and if you can see the specs over here, this one's ended up being 250 yards and 65 grams. And remember, each one of these should be about 2/3 of the 100-gram skein. So each should be around 66. So that's great. The second one, which is now a mix of the 2 braids. Ooh, maybe it'll be more fun to reveal. I'm going to reveal number 3 first. Okay, so here's number 3, which is the pure 2 plies of Garden Path, which is a Rambouillet from Bramble Ridge. And this color is basically the one that I showed the fiber all split for, or I unbraided it. And it's got these greens and purples and sort of this butter yellowy color. But it really just goes blue or greens to purples and back to greens and back to purples. So it's less colors than this one for sure. So you can see the differences of what they look like on their own. And you can see the specs for number 3. This is number 3 here. So I got 300 yards over 68 grams. And then the rest is all the middle. And I did use every last spec of the 2 braids. So this is the one that will combine these 2 together. So 1 ply from this colorway, 1 ply from this. Dun, 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 dun. And I love this. It's so interesting and colorful. Like you can see how it picks up colors from both. And I'm going to open these all up so we can see them sort of in bigger, looser form. Now these have not been washed and set. So for people who may not know spinning, you want to wash and set your yarn. It relaxes it. It lets it plump up. And this should plump up as well. So it should get a little sort of thicker and brighter. So I'll actually measure the final specs after I do that. I just haven't done that yet because I just finished this today. So here's all 3 together, and I love it. So the idea of this, and it may not look like it looks pretty barber pole-y here. I've done fades like this before. When you actually knit it out or crochet it or whatever you end up doing with it, it actually creates a nice cohesive fade. So you can just go from one skein to the next in order. And it's a really fun way to take 2 braids and make it into something that's a little more interesting. So I wanted to talk, now that I've got sort of, here they are, don't they look great? I wanted to talk about something that I struggled with a lot when I was first getting started with spinning and had to figure out. So I figured I would talk it through here. So I've got my specs on how many yards I'm getting and how many grams. And one of the things I really struggled with when I was a new spinner was understanding grist. And grist is really how many yards you get for a certain weight of fiber. And usually people do that as yard per pound. I do that as yards per gram. So every gram of fiber, I get this many yards. The reason I do it that way is because I never use pounds when it comes to fiber, so it doesn't make sense for me to convert from grams to pounds just to do yard per pound. But basically, the higher the number, the more yardage you're going to get, with all things held equal. But there's so many factors that go into grist, and I wanted to just kind of highlight here the differences. So I spun this all the exact same, but you'll notice the first braid was Polwarth, and the second braid was Rambouillet. I didn't feel like spelling it, so I call it Rambo. I say Rambo a lot too. And the third one was a combination of both. And you can see that the ones that have Polwarth in them both are pretty similar. 3.85 yards per gram, 3.82 yards per gram. They're very similar, but then the one that's pure Rambouillet, 4.41 yards per gram. So I got more yardage from a very similar weight. So if I did the exact same weight of fiber from both, more yardage from the Rambouillet. Now that could be because it was the third one I did, and maybe I was just getting a little bit thinner, but I tried really hard to be consistent and not go super thin. You can see in some spots, and every hand spinner will have this, like this one right here. You can see that really thin, light colored one. Every so often I'll get a little bit too thin and have to correct myself. But for the most part, this is pretty consistent in how I spun it up. So it could just be that the Rambouillet fiber is just a little bit lighter and spins with a little less density. All of this was worsted spun, which is the way that I draft. So I was doing a draft kind of like, do I have any fiber sitting here? Sure, I've got some. So when I'm spinning, I'm pulling little bits out like this and just sort of doing that. So it's kind of a short forward draw. I kind of tug backwards. I don't know if that has a different word, but it's definitely a worsted spin, which is not the yarn weight. It's just how I'm kind of squeezing the air out. So it's not a lofty yarn so much as a durable and really consistent solid yarn. So when I'm calculating something like this, I thought it was worth kind of noting how I calculate it. So you need to know your yardage and you need to know your weight. So for the weight, I got this scale. I think I just got this one on Amazon. The thing I like about this scale is it gets pretty granular, so it can go to like decimal places for grams. It's gonna want me to put it down to actually normals. Okay, so it can get down to the 100th of a gram, which is really nice for if like I'm taking a tiny bit of fiber, like if I was gonna take this little bit here and I wanted to weigh it, I can do that. Whereas most kitchen scales and stuff that you get kind of start at the gram level. So because it goes down to hundreds of a gram, I can do really small amounts of fiber and get really granular with weights. So what I typically do to weigh it is when I've got it in this hank form, I can either put a bin on here and tear that and then weigh it, but typically what I end up doing is just kind of put it into a ball like this and set it on. And we can see the weight there. So 65.24, and I wrote down 65 grams. I could have got more granular, I didn't. But that's how I find out the weight. If it's too big for this surface, you got to put a container on it and tear it with the tear button so that it takes out the weight of that, and then you can put the fiber in. The other thing, the other portion is how many yards it is. So how do I know that this is 250 yards? So what I actually have is I have a, my husband made me a Swift. So I bought a Swift. I don't have it down here. It's big to kind of show off. I'll share it in my Instagram stories, but that won't be easy to find depending on when you're actually watching this. But what it did is it took it and made it into sort of a yarn winder that sits vertically. So the Swift, instead of sitting on the table and going like this, it goes up like this, not like an umbrella Swift, but it's just like sitting vertically. And then I have a crank on it. And so I crank it right off my bobbin on my wheel onto that Swift. And I know that one rotation of that is 2 yards, and it has a little magnet and counter thing. It's actually really cool. My husband likes to really make me some really nice tools that are really handy for me to use. So every time I go around in a circle, it counts 1. So I know once I wind it off to make this sort of hank form of a skein, I know how many rotations it was, and I can multiply that by 2, and that becomes how many yards it is. So that's a really simple way for me. Some people have a nitty naughty. I've got one down here, 3D printed one, which is a tool that looks like this, and you can wrap it around. And if you know how many is in one wrap, then you can count how many rounds you have. Or if you have it in like a skein form like this, let me just clear some space, you can actually open it up. I would recommend doing this after you wash it and set it. You can open it up, measure how long it is from this end, of course I smacked the camera, to this end, okay? Measure how long that is in inches or whatever. Multiply it by 2 because each time it's going twice that, right? It's going around once and then back twice. And that will tell you how many inches it is total around, and then you multiply that. You just count, literally count how many strands you have, and you can multiply that. So that's another way to figure out how much it is. It just needs a measuring tape, no fancy equipment, just measuring tape and a bit of time to count these. But now that I've opened this up, we can see the colors. And again, we're in kind of my basement workshop area that is fluorescent lights. And again, it also has not been washed and set, so it's not sitting as pretty as it will eventually. But I figure I'll open all of these up so you can see them, because I'm pretty excited about this fade. And I saw Simply Fibers on Instagram also took 2 Bramble Ridge braids and did a 3-color fade, 2-ply, just the same as me. Well, not the same 2 colors, but it's just so much fun to see different people. And we both finished it today, so we were like twinning, which was so fun. You can also see, I talked in one video about how I didn't want to have the plies on this one line up because they only had 3 colors that it rotated between. Sort of a lot higher chance that the plies would line up and give me some solid colors. And you can see it did that a little bit, but generally I did a staggered start on it so that hopefully they wouldn't really align. And most of the alignment all happened on one end of the skein. So what I'll probably do is that'll be my finishing end of the skein, and I may not actually need to use it all in whatever project I choose. So this still has some tension. You can see it's kind of bunching up as we go, especially this middle guy. But this will give you sort of a nice idea of how the project will look and how sort of seamless it's going to go from one color to the other, because it's got elements of both in this middle one. I'm going to try to stretch them out a little. Maybe if I go this way. Haha, that looks cool. At least in my mind. But yes, once I wash them and set them, the 2 that I did today, I did this one yesterday, but the 2 I did today still have a lot of energy in them. You can see them really bunching up here. But if I can get my stuff together here and actually kind of pull these like this, there, you can get kind of a view of how these colors will fade together. And this is so much fun. Oh, I should have brought it. Next time I'll bring for the next video I do, I'll bring my actual projects that I've made out of some of these fades. I've done a 2-braid fade before, and I've done a 4-braid fade, and I did those both in Tour de Fleece last year, and I've made them both in 2 projects. One is a shawl and one is a cowl. So that is that all I want to talk about? Oh, I wanted to also talk about my bobbin management, because I think I was trying to describe it with no visual aids in the last video, and I'm not sure I was successful at doing so. So I actually sort of wrote it out, which is always good to kind of write out what you're doing when you're spinning, so that you can remember. I'm one of those people who pretends that I'm going to remember and that I don't need to write things down, and then I never remember. And then I forget that I never remember, and on it goes. So I would definitely recommend writing down, having a spinning journal, writing down, you know, where's the source of the fiber? How much have you done? How did you prep it? How did you draft it and spin it? Which wheel did you use if you have multiple wheels? Because sometimes we pretend we're gonna remember, and I just know myself, at least, I'll never remember. I'm trying to just make these into cute little buttons to kind of have them there. Okay, so here's my visual aid. So I was trying to do this. So everything was 2-ply, and I have on my castle style wheel my Louet. If someone can tell me if I'm saying it wrong, that'd be great. S50, I only have 3 bobbins, and I didn't want to be binding or winding things off for onto storage bobbins because I was too excited to see how it went. So the first thing I did, was this. I put 2/3 of it. I ripped it into 3 strips, and I've done that on one of my previous videos. I ripped into 3 strips, so I had thirds. I did 2/3 of it on one bobbin, and then on the second bobbin I did 1/3, but I did it reverse, so I started on the other end, and that's so that when I apply those 2 plies together, they're not the exact same. They don't line up exactly to create sort of a solid color effect, because I didn't want that. I wanted this barber pole striping effect. So then I did those together to make this one, and that left me with 1/3 from this section here, because when I did 1/3 of this, and then I took 1/3 of the 2/3 here when I applied them, and the rest remained on one bobbin. So then I had 2 bobbins empty again, which is great. I did 2/3 of the garden path, which is this color, onto one. So I had 1/3 of the KCV and 2/3 of the garden path, each on a bobbin. And so then I put those together, and I just went until I was out of this one. The first one I just went till I was out of this one. These 2 I just went until I was out of this one. And that's what this is. So that was 1 ply of this, 1 ply of this together. And then that left me with 1/3 again of garden path. And then I did the other third. I spun that single, and I did it staggered again, because I didn't want too much of this sort of solid color look that we got here. So by staggered, I just mean I ripped off the first color and I added that to the end, so that I'm not starting in the same color as the rest of the singles started on this bobbin. And that seemed to work well enough. I mean, you never are so consistent. Well, I'm never so consistent that everything always lines up how you think it is. But generally it went pretty well. So that was my general strategy on how I created these, as far as spinning them to keep them managed on bobbins, and never have to use more than 3 bobbins. So that's this news. One other thing that I'm excited about is I did finish, basically I've got 2 singles here. Each of them are around 9 grams from my supported spindle, which is a new to me technique. And I'm going to apply them up into a little mini so I can sample it and see how it goes. But these are done long draw on a supported spindle. And this is my very, very first supported spindle spin. So it's really nice and thin and consistent, in my opinion. I'm pretty proud of that. And we'll see how it applies up to see how I like it before I continue on with that. And then the last thing to talk about is what I'm going to spin next. Oh my gosh, I'm already at 17 minutes. So I was going to spin these next, and I was going to do these into a 4 braid fade with 2 of these and 2 of these, and gradually go from pure this color to pure this color across, what would I be doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know, 4 skeins? No. Yeah, it would have been 400 gram skeins, probably. But I've decided that I don't want to do another fade. I loved doing this fade, but instead I want to do a big combo spin. So combo spin is anytime you're sort of combining 2 different fibers or 2 different color sets or anything. So I actually have another fiber coming from Bramble Ridge. I know I'm doing Stashdashers, which means I should be going from my stash, but I actually ordered these before Tour de Fleece started. They just haven't arrived yet. So I believe they count, and we're pretty loosey-goosey on rules in our Stashdashers. If you want more details on that, I've got it tucked away. So instead of doing these 2 as a fade, and I'll just like put them here, and I mean all 4 of these as a fade, similar to this but bigger, I'm actually going to escalate it up to, we're going to do 6 braids. So I'm going to add another stack here with another color, I think. And instead of doing a fade, I'm just going to do a giant combo spin. So I'm going to end up with 600 grams of consistent combo spin, which means I spin all the singles the same way. I spin, you know, all of these as a single in the same order over and over. These as a single in the same order over and over, and the other 2 as one single. And then I apply those all together, and that becomes my sweater quantity combo spin. And that's where my head is at right now. I may change my mind tomorrow, but I've decided not to go ahead with this fade. So that means the only thing I have left that was on my list that I haven't finished is the bats that I split in prep for day one, or that I started on day one. And I'm almost done those two. So I'm getting really low on what I had planned to do, and I'm shifting my plans because we're into week 2, so why not? But yeah, hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully it gives you some inspiration. I'll probably be talking through what I'm doing next in a few days. But until then, I hope you're getting out there. I hope you're spinning or trying something new or getting to do something crafty. And by the time I see you next, hopefully I also have these all washed up and have the full specs on them. So happy spinning, happy knitting, happy crafting. I hope you're having a great July so far, or whenever it is you're watching this, and I'll see you guys later.